We lost our coffee. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. This is very, very exciting. I want to ask you to give a big applause to our staff and our volunteers and our trainees, current trainees, because a lot of work has been done. So this is possible. Yesterday, we had an amazing party, right? And we celebrating 90 years is something that is really a big accomplishment. So can we just big applause for our staff and volunteers and our trainees. So for me, being a member of the board is a big honor, is something that is just amazing. And everything in my life changed when I had the opportunity to come to Hawk Mountain 26 years ago. And I had the opportunity to go back home and just give back a lot of things that I learned here. And this program is really a life changing opportunity for all of us. So you don't imagine the impact that this has globally. And everybody that has participated in anything related to Hawk Mountain, either donating or just being here as a volunteer or anything, you are touching the world of conservation. So thank you all for everything you're doing, because at the end, every single thing that you do in Hot Mountain has a larger impact. I want you to meet now Jennie, our beloved Jennie. Jennie Duberstein, Dr. Jennie Duberstein, is the coordinator of the Sonoran Joint Venture, a program that connects people from the Southwest and Northwest Mexico to collaborate on birds and habitat stewardship. She is, no, I'm not gonna read. Jennie was an educational intern, because we are interns. And the fall of 1996, and then she came back on winter. You cheated because I didn't know we could do it twice. Okay. So recently she has been supported the Sanctuary's New World Vulture Project in Arizona. So very much welcome. Come here.
Good morning, everybody. Let's see. How's everybody? Getting, I saw at some point there was like a ray of sunshine that came down on the speakers, and I was hoping that would continue, but I'll shiver up here with the rest of you. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Sounds good? Okay. Whew. All right. So when Laurie sent me an email inviting me to be part of this amazing opportunity, I was honored, of course, to get that email. And then I immediately wrote back and I said, but I don't work in raptor conservation principally now. Are you sure? And she wrote back, she's like, yes, of course, you do amazing work. Come talk. And so I said, all right. And then I saw the names of the other incredible people who you're going to hear from throughout the day. And I kept suffering from imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not sure how I got lucky enough to be asked to be up here talking to all of you, but it's truly an honor to get to come back to a place, as Anna said, that it was so formative for me. When I first came here, I was 23, almost, I was about to turn 24. I celebrated my 24th birthday, I think, my first week being here at Hawk Mountain. And I truly can trace everything in my career that has come is as a result of the people that I met here, the experiences that I gained, and the skills that I learned over the course of the 6 or so months that I was here. I'm going to share some of that with you, talk to you a little bit about what I do, and just tell you some stories about how that has impacted me and the people around me. So you have to push the down arrow to get your slides to go forward. This is counterintuitive. All right. So when I started putting this presentation together, at one point it had something like 90 slides. And I said, okay, that's a little bit too much. And so I dialed it way back. You're getting like the summary version of what I do. But the big picture, I sat down and I said, okay, what are the big issues facing birds and bird habitat in the part of the world where I live, probably in the part of the world where you live also. And this is not at all a comprehensive list. As I was looking through this, things like urban and suburban development, then you can talk about cats and you can talk about collisions and you can talk about light pollution. There's a never ending list of the things that are facing birds and habitat conservation. But for me, when I look at this, there's one thing that all of these items have in common. And apparently I moved that slide to another spot, so I'll come back to that thought. I went to college at Virginia Tech. I went to university at Virginia Tech and I studied wildlife biology. I was not a bird person. I was not a raptor person. I was wildlife and nature person. I just wanted to do something outdoors. I had this dream. There's this subgenre of memoirs by people who are wildlife vets. And I had a whole collection of wildlife vet memoirs. James Herriot, All Creatures Great and Small, that whole series. I was going to work in rehabilitation or work at a zoo. And then I took organic chemistry. I took one semester of organic chemistry and decided that I did not, in fact, need to go to vet school, that I was good being just a plain old wildlife biologist. And my father was a paddler. He kayaked. And I know one of the current trainees is from the area of Ohio Pile. He kayaked up there a ton. Yeah, there we go. And he also kayaked at near Moraine State Park at McConnell's Mill in that area north of Pittsburgh. I grew up in Pittsburgh. And osprey had been extirpated from the area, and there was an osprey reintroduction program, and he had heard they were looking for field technicians. And he's like, oh, my daughter studies wildlife. You should talk to her. And he put me in touch with the folks hiring, and I got hired by the Marine Preservation Fund to spend my summer. And I apologize in advance to the people online. I know you can't see my laser pointer. Poking dead fish through a little flap to feed osprey chicks that had been brought up from nests in Virginia, to reintroduce them to southwestern Pennsylvania. And I met birders for the first time. I don't think I knew that birders were a thing before this. I have a very clear memory of identifying a male yellow warbler down around there was some scrub around the bottom of the hacking tower. And I couldn't believe that like this gorgeous bird was just right there. And so I spent my summer feeding osprey, and then after they fledged, driving around the lake in a boat, just tracking their activities and their movements. And that was it. I was hooked from there. I wanted to work with birds, and if I could do something with raptors, that's what I wanted to do. So I went back to, I'm going to get back to my slide about the thing that all the threats had in common. Hopefully I didn't delete it, but I'll tell you the story anyway. I went back to college, and I was starting to have this realization that to work in conservation, it wasn't just about feeding fish to birds and tracking their movements, that people were a key part of it. And that without working with people and without understanding people, we really can't be successful at what we do in conservation. And at the time, this was the early 90s, mid 90s. What this meant to me was, I must environmental education. That's how you work with people. You go into environmental education. And so I did. I got certified in Project Wild and Project Learning Tree and Project Wet, and was doing teacher trainings, and graduated and worked for, I got hired by the YMCA of Central Ohio as a naturalist in their outdoor education program. And let's see what slide comes next. Eventually, I came in the fall of 1996. I was hired as an education intern here at Hawk Mountain. And although I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, I really had spent almost no time in this part of the state, except for driving through on the turnpike on the way to visit family in New York. So it was a whole new experience, a whole new world for me. And I dug up a few pictures, me with the barred owl and some friends who had came to visit me. And we went for a hike up on North Lookout. All right. Okay, this is a slide that I thought was going to follow this slide with all the threats. So conservation is about behavior. Almost universally, we are not trying to change the behavior of birds, right? Sometimes we are, there's some cases, but usually we're trying to change human behavior. We're trying to get people to start doing something. We're trying to get people to keep on doing something. And in a lot of cases, we're trying to get people to stop doing something, right? So without understanding the views, the perspectives, the values, the needs, like why are people doing the things that they're doing, we can't ultimately really make the changes that we want to see for birds. So what I do today, this is the Migratory Bird Joint Ventures, hopefully in 10 minutes or less. I direct a program called the Sonoran Joint Venture, which is, oh, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. What did I hit that I shouldn't have? I fast forwarded to the end. There we go. Thank you. This bottom one is the, oh, the arrow. The arrow pointing at all you. No, I don't know how to do it. Okay, hold on. So that's me. Now I'm going to try this again. There we go. The Sonoran Joint Venture, Southwestern US, Northwest Mexico. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be here all week. The Migratory Bird Joint Ventures are a program that started in the mid 80s. In 1986, they came out of the North American Waterfowl Management Plan that, you know, it was looking at these declines in populations of waterfowl and the challenges to wetland conservation after the creation of the North American Wetlands Conservation Act, NAWCA, as we like to call it. And they said, you know, the way that we're going to address waterfowl and wetland conservation is through the creation of these public-private partnerships called Migratory Bird Joint Ventures. And there were, I think, 6 that were originally created in the mid to late 80s. The Sonoran Joint Venture came about in 1999, and we're the first of what they call the all-bird joint ventures. So initially they were focused on waterfowl and wetlands, and now joint ventures support the conservation, the stewardship of all birds and their habitats. And so the Sonoran Joint Venture, this is us up close. You can read our mission. If you want to learn more, please come to our website. But it's a broad geographic area. It's all or part of 9 states in the United States and in Mexico, 2 countries, many tribes, sovereign nations. Almost 750 species of birds have been documented either breeding in, wintering in, or migrating through this geography. And that, you know, that bullet's about birds, but it's just an incredible area of biodiversity, biocultural diversity for everything. So ants, oak trees, languages, bees, like it's fascinating. You have Sonoran Desert from the west and Chihuahuan Desert from the east and the Rocky Mountains from the north and the Sierra Madre from the south. There's influence from the Great Plains. There's influence from the Great Basin. And it's just like this collision of biocultural diversity that all happens right here in the zone. And so what comes along with that is a lot of challenges in how you address conservation issues. So it's an interesting place to work. So what do we do? If you talk to any of the coordinators of any of the joint ventures across the country, across the US and Canada, they'll say, I guarantee almost everyone will start whatever they say to you with, well, each joint venture is a little different. And it's true, we are all a little different, but we, in a nutshell, we help facilitate conservation. We bring people together to support collaboration. We help coordinate things like conservation planning, coordinate funding, and basically provide support for people doing work in the region. I describe my job as the coordinator of the program as sort of a conservation matchmaker. And so my job is to understand what everybody's doing, help connect people with each other, help connect people with opportunities, provide training and funding so people can do the great work that they're doing on the ground. And I'm an employee of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but what we do, it's really a public-private partnership. So we bring together federal and state agencies, people from academia, from nonprofits, from industry, from indigenous nations, private landowners, bring everybody together to say, what are the things that we are all collectively concerned about, but that are too big for any one organization or state, in our case, any one country to take on by themselves. We need to work together to make progress on this. These are some examples of the types of projects that we support, the type of work that we support. We do have a small grants program, very small, like $10 to $15,000 at the most, seed money to help people get their efforts going. And we support this type of work. And then I think the rest of my slides are just some examples in this section of work that we do. We spend a fair bit of effort, particularly in Mexico, on capacity building and providing training that our partners have requested. This is a picture from a workshop in Mazatlan that we provided for biologists from natural protected areas throughout the country. And so they came to spend a week with us to learn how to design and implement a bird monitoring program for their natural protected area. I think this is true in the United States as well. In Mexico, there might be, one biologist for this gigantic protected area, and they're a specialist in pine trees, but they're also in charge of birds, and they're also in charge of insects, and they're also in charge of mammals. And so they don't necessarily have the training to go monitor birds. And so the goal of this particular workshop was to give them sort of those baseline skills, everything from bird identification to how to conduct point counts to how to analyze your data. It was a fun workshop. It was so tough having to spend 2 weeks in Mazatlan. I suffer for my job. We also lately have been focusing a lot on developing tools. This is a tool for land managers in Arizona. Similarly, foresters, people that are working with fire management, but they're not bird people. So they're undertaking actions that are impacting bird habitat, but maybe don't have the training and knowledge to consider, how could I change this? If I wait to burn 3 more weeks, then all of those birds that are breeding will finish and fledge, and then I can still do what I need to do for fire, but also support bird populations. So this is an example. Look, it's a raptor. I tried to find something that had to do with raptors. This is our Swainson's hawk account. A species account, this is the first page. It has just sort of life history information, and then there's a map that shows the range within the state. And then the rest of it focuses on threats to the species and then specific management activities that people could undertake to address those threats. And here's a common black hawk species account. There you go. You can see page 1 and page 2. We actually have a hawk watch in Southeast Arizona that happens every spring. We have this common black hawk migration, and like hundreds of common black hawks fly up the Santa Cruz River up to, I don't even know where they go, northern Arizona, where they're breeding, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of a cool little lesser known hawk watch. They're starting to get a little bit more visibility. And I get to do some field work sometimes. JF, I can see you smiling. This is JF's friend, Doug. Keith Bilstein and JF came out to do some vulture trapping and monitoring, and I had the pleasure of spending lots of very hot, very smelly days in the field with them. Keith emailed me and said, could you help us find a place to trap? And then I started a series of very uncomfortable phone calls to like the garbage dump in the city of Tucson and various dairy farms. And I always had to start with, okay, hear me out. This is going to sound really weird, but, this was, I don't get to do a ton of field work anymore. So it was very nice to get to spend some time in the field. And I gained a whole new appreciation for vultures, which I now love. And I mean, I was sort of ambivalent about them, I guess, before, but they're really beautiful, beautiful birds. And I got a little impromptu. We had some like people driving by saw what we were doing and stopped. So I got to do a little education interpretation. Oh, Phoebe. For those of you online, Phoebe has just flown in and perched on the light. Okay, there are some challenges in working in a cross-border area communication. You know, obviously we speak different languages, and so that can be a challenge. Dealing with differences in the availability of technology, in funding, you know, how do we get money to Mexico or back and forth across the border? Just differences in the amount of capacity. And this has it's been really interesting. I've been working for the Sonoran Joint Venture for almost 21 years now. And in that time, seeing the growth of the capacity of Mexico to do bird conservation work. When I first started working, you know, there were a handful of people, not even a handful of people in Sonora. And now there's like birding clubs and so many people doing really excellent work. And then just differences in culture. So the role of the Sonoran Joint Venture is to help bridge these gaps between the two countries and bring together people in the United States and Mexico so that we can work together. And one of the most powerful ways, like being in meetings and writing conservation plans and funding proposals, that's all really important. But the place where sort of the real connection happens is when we get to spend time together in the field. And this is a picture from a recent board meeting. We were in Ensenada, and my board chair, who is this person, he's the executive director of the Grupo de Ecología y Conservación de Islas, the Island Conservation and Ecology Group. They do incredible work on invasive species eradication on islands throughout Mexico and seabird reintroduction, I guess. Yeah. Ask me later. Come up and tap me on the shoulder and ask me about the black-footed albatross relocation. Don't have time to tell you now, but it's a good story. But spending time going out to see people's projects, talk about what our challenges are, and sort of creatively problem solve together. This is really the power of the joint venture. But I'm really here to talk to you about my long-term relationship. For the last 27 years, every summer, this used to be my actual job that I got paid for, but lately I see Holly Merker laughing at me from the back because she also does this in her summers. I have been directing summer camps for young birders. And this started, I don't remember the order of the slides. Okay, so here we go. That's baby Jennie. When I started doing this, one of the criteria, I was hired after I left Hawk Mountain. I had a brief stint. George School outside of Philadelphia hired me to teach science. One of their teachers was going on maternity leave, and so they pulled me in for a semester. And then I got hired by what's now called Bird Conservancy of the Rockies. Back then it was Colorado Bird Observatory, to be their youth program coordinator and to run their summer camp program and other youth education programs throughout the year. And I eventually became their education director. But I guess I was 24 when they hired me. And so one of the criteria that I had when I hired my staff was you have to be 25, because I was too young to drive a rental vehicle when I was doing this. So little fun fact, I am no longer too young to drive the rental vehicle. So every year for the last 27 years, I've had the good fortune, either in Colorado, that's the camp that I direct now, Camp Colorado for the American Birding Association. I co-lead Camp Chiricahua for Victor Emmanuel Nature Tours, and I help provide support to the American Birding Association's young birder programs in general. And Holly and I work together to make these great experiences happen for kids every summer. She runs a camp for them in Delaware and Cape May, Camp Delaware Bay. Let's see, I keep pointing. There we go. Okay, so this is a more recent picture of me up on the alpine tundra at Medicine Bow Curve in Rocky Mountain National Park, if anybody's been there. These kids come for 13 to 17-year-olds from all over the country. I've had campers from Canada, from Panama, from Mexico, to spend a week, 2 weeks, depending on the program, learning about birds, learning about conservation, and just getting to spend time with other kids their age that are also interested in birds. Some more pictures. This is, yeah, also up on Trail Ridge Road at Rocky Mountain National Park. There's, if you go, has anybody here been to Rocky Mountain National Park? Alpine Visitor Center? Okay, so you know, you park in the Alpine Visitor Center parking lot and there's that steep set of stairs. This is, I've only, in 27 years, I've only actually climbed those stairs once. This is the picture. Just a few more pictures of the kids. It's just, it really is. The last night of camp, we do this sort of session where the kids, you know, they share, you know, what was your favorite memory of camp? And it, without fail, becomes hugely emotional. Everybody's crying. It's the first time that if any of you go birding and there's a young birder that's with your group, it's usually there's like one young person and then there's a bunch of old people, right? And this is the first time for most of these kids that they have been able to come together with a group of other teenagers their age that are not going to look at them funny if they say, well, yes, I'm very interested in nocturnal flight calls, or I would like to talk about molt migration. And everybody will gather around them and say like, yes, tell us more. And it's, you know, it's worse than that. Like many of these kids have to hide the fact that they're interested in birds because it's not cool to like birds when you're 14 years old. And so this camp is just sort of a place where everybody can relax and have fun and be surrounded by other people that are into the same things that you're into. Oh, isn't that cute? We spend time doing field work. Some iterations of this camp that I've led have really been more field ornithology camps where kids come up with a research question, collect data, analyze the data, actually write little mini papers and give a presentation at the end of camp. This program, On the Wing, is still run by Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, which is really cool to see. And we spend time, we have field craft workshops, just the sort of little mini 2-hour workshops where kids learn different skills depending on the skill set of my instructor team. So this is a picture that I took. The workshop I always teach is field journaling, which comes, I'm going to bring it right back to Hawk Mountain. I learned this skill here at Hawk Mountain. Dan Clem taught us how to keep Grinnell style field journals back in 1996. And every year I teach my bird campers that. And Dan shared, this is a really funny small world story. This was the book that he told us we should all go get. It was out of print. I found a copy eventually in a used bookstore. And then about 3 years ago, I hired a science coordinator. His name is Adam Hanexella. He's still my science coordinator. And we have like a weekly lab meeting for the staff, that something I learned from Keith in the lab meetings that he hosted for the interns, where we'd all take turns reading papers. Oh my gosh, 5 minutes. Okay. Anyway, the long story short is that Adam, my science coordinator, is married to Steve Herman's daughter. And he's like, oh yeah, my father-in-law wrote this thing about field journals. And yeah, anyway, it all came full circle. But what I did, I was a very dedicated field journaler for my time here at Hawk Mountain and for years afterwards. And so in preparing this, I gave a talk during the pandemic. We had virtual bird camp. I gave the Hog Islanders a lesson on how to keep a field journal. And I went through, I don't know if you can read this. This is my actual field journal from Hawk Mountain, not India ink. Not archival paper. But this is my first day. Great day. Hike to North Lookout with Bill Hilton Jr., Annette Edwards, Laurie Goodrich, Jeremy Shivert, and the other interns. And then, you know, I geek out about all the cool stuff we saw. This evening, I was introduced to the local dining experience with dinner at the Kempton. Parentheses, not bad. Saw the first Ford dealership, a big red barn. And then, okay, so I also have my 10 minutes of fame today. The Reading newspaper ran an article about the mountain and they quoted me, exclamation point, quite an exciting moment. And I'm going to say this, my mother, I think, is online. Hi, Mom. I am nothing if not my mother's daughter. She sends me newspaper clippings all the time and I keep them. This one she didn't send me. I found this one. I'm going to rush that. So this is the newspaper. I actually still have it. So August 23rd through 25th, 1996, the weekend section. This is the piece that was written. And then my little quote is right here. And I know it's too small for you to read, so I made it big. Apparently, these are my words of wisdom. Yeah. Excellent. But what, and I'm gonna try to get through this. I know I have like 3 seconds left, but this is the coolest part of my talk. This is a picture from the very first Young Birders Conference that the American Birding Association and Colorado Bird Observatory did in Fort Collins, Colorado in 2000. So I was like 3 years into this. These people are all doing amazing things now, and I want to share a little bit of that with you. There are people like Scott Yanko, who you can see 3/4 of his face there. He's an environmental consultant. He's going to come into my story later. People like Nick Barber. He's an associate professor at San Diego State University right now. Nick Barber, an associate professor at Stonehill College outside of Boston. Sorry, I'm cutting off David Vanderplyme's face. He's a PhD student at Louisiana State University right now. Wrong way. You might not recognize Michael Redder. He is one of the editors of Birding Magazine. He's a field guide author. He has been an instructor for Camp Colorado. Not everybody that comes to bird camp goes on to work in bird conservation, but a lot of them, like the goal is that you have an appreciation for birds. You care about birds. You're going to vote in favor of birds, do things beneficial for birds. This is Gabe Leidy, who's an incredible nature photographer. I've actually been checking his social media feed to see, he lives in Cleveland, and so to see what sort of Northern Lights pictures he got yesterday. And then there's Ben Winger. Some of you might know Ben, also from Ohio. He's an associate professor of ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Michigan and the assistant curator at their Museum of Zoology. J.B. Brumfeld, 1 minute left. Oh my gosh, Cleveland Metro Parks biologist, Camp Colorado instructor. I'm going to rush through these next things, but these kids, these are all now in their 40s. Oh wait, and I have Jessie Berry also, who's the Macaulay Library program manager, was instrumental. She guided the team that developed the Merlin app before that, if you have that on your phone. So some of the people, so if you come to bird camp, who is teaching you? So I have interns at bird camp. This is Johanna Beam. She was a past camper. I don't need to read this to you. That's what Joanna does. People like Scott Olmstead. He is a high school Spanish teacher in Tucson by day. Leads tours for Wings in the evening. I think he's the eBird reviewer for the whole country of Ecuador or something like that, a big chunk of Ecuador. There's JB again, and just for the full, there's JB in 2000 in the little inset, and that's JB today. And there's me. Okay, a few more. There's Jordan Rudder. She is the director of public relations for the American Bird Conservancy, also a past Young Birder of the Year, the American Birding Association. People like Rafael Galvez, who is a field guide author. He wrote the field guide, I'm going to get the name wrong, to the Raptors and Owls of Georgia, the country, not the state. And he's also a tour leader for Vent. That's Corey Borgman. I work with her at the Fish and Wildlife Service. She's in our regional office in Albuquerque. Raymond Van Buskirk, also another amazing person. I just learned yesterday he is starting his own young birder camp, I think in New Mexico. Watch this space for more details. And then Joel Such. Joel was my intern. He was a camper. I think when he was 11, he was the Young Birder of the Year. He's now married to a Colombian woman, lives in Colombia, where with her family, they run an eco lodge, and he's doing bird work down there. And me. Okay. One last picture. There's Jake Molman, Wings tour leader. There's a lot of great people in Tucson where I live, and so I pick from my Tucson colleagues, bring them up to Colorado. Come on. There we go. Sebastian Moreno was one of my instructors last year. He's a PhD candidate at UMass Amherst. He is an intern with the Fish and Wildlife Service at our regional office in Hadley, Massachusetts also. There's JB. JB comes back a lot. But you might recognize Patrick Maurice, who was a trainee here last fall, right? 2 falls ago. Oh yeah, because he was at Cape May working as an educator down there 2 falls ago. I met Patrick. If anybody who knows Patrick knows he's like this tall. I was taller than Patrick when I first met him. And I have not grown. I think he was 14 when he first came to Camp Colorado. Then he came to my camp in Arizona. Then he came back to Colorado. And he has family in Arizona. So whenever they'd come visit, I'd go out to dinner with their family. And he'd say, when can I be an intern? And I said, when you turn 21, Patrick. And so for the last 2 summers, he was my intern. And so it brings it all back to Hawk Mountain. Okay, I have one more, whoops, wrong way. One more story that I really want to share. Oh, there's me. Okay. So travel back in time with me to 1999. This is before the days of cell phones. This is before the days of digital cameras. This is before the days of every kid coming to bird camp with like a camera lens that you don't understand how they can stay upright because it's so big, right? There were 2 kids at camp that had cameras. One of them was taking pictures with slide film. And remember those days when you took a picture and you didn't know if it was going to come out because you had to get it developed. This was a session of camp called Mountains to Mesas. And we started in the Front Range, drove up and over the Continental Divide and down into the western slope of Colorado. And we were in Colorado National Monument. And we were pulled over like at a picnic area, and there were a bunch of turkey vultures circling around. We were all kind of looking around birding. And one of the campers says, Jenny, I think that's a zone-tailed hawk. And I was like, huh. Pulled out I think I had the National Geographic field guide, and I was like, zone-tailed hawk? Nope, they don't occur in Colorado. They've never been seen in Colorado. There was no eBird. There was no, like, you couldn't look it up. Just like, no. And he's like, all right. And went about, just stayed focused on that bird. And he's like, I think y'all need to look at this bird. And so we all looked at it, and it was, circling and getting closer. And then it stooped a couple of times at something on the ridge, and we could see like these yellow legs come down, and we could see yellow on the bill. And clearly it was not a turkey vulture. There was like barring on the underside of the wings, and we're like, that's a zone-tailed hawk. And I said, okay, everybody get out your notebooks. Everybody's going to take field notes. Sketch this bird. Write down everything you see about it. You with the cameras, take pictures. And so I'm going to share with you some of the field notes from that day. These are my field notes from what we saw. July 17th, 1999. Just, kind of describing what it looked like and the behavior. These are the field notes of Nick Barber, who you will see based on his field notes compared to mine at 16, was a far better ornithologist than I will ever be. Something that continues to this day. These are the crack photographs that resulted from that day. This one was taken by Adam Wood. The original is slightly better, but not much. And then Scott Yanko coming in clutch. And so we wrote up these reports. Me and 2 of the other campers wrote up rare bird reports. We submitted it, and it was accepted as the new state record, the first record of zone-tailed hawk in the state of Colorado, found by a group of teenagers. Kind of amazing. Yeah. So I think that's my last slide. Oh yeah, this is them. Okay, so there's Nick Barber, the one with the detailed notes. This is Scott Yanko, who took the slide with the 2 pictures. There's Adam Wood, who took the slide film. Yeah, that's me on the end. This group of intrepid teenagers who are now in their mid-40s found Colorado's first state record of zone-tailed hawk. All of that is to say, the investment in youth, in education, in outreach, it has far-reaching impacts, kind of beyond what you might see in the moment. And it's so interesting how these stories come full circle. Like if you had asked me if I thought I would ever be telling the story about the zone-tailed hawk here at Hawk Mountain's 90th anniversary, probably wouldn't have occurred to me. But I'm so glad that I got to share it with you. And I think that's it. Okay, there we go. I may have eaten up all my question time. Okay, I had 6 minutes for questions. 5 minutes. No long worded questions, please.
For questions, if you want to raise your hand, I can bring the mic over to you.
I sometimes I every time I go to bird camp, I try to. I do not like I used to do it every single day. And I would like I wish that I could say yes, but I will say occasionally. Yeah.
So without looking at my current field guide, how common are the zone-tailed hawks there now?
That's a good question. Not common. I suspect if they show up, it's probably in the southern part of the state. I'm not sure. Can somebody check eBird? Let us know. No, so actually part of that, it was really interesting because I am not organized enough to have kept all the scans that I shared. I Googled Colorado zone-tailed hawk, and the Colorado Rare Birds Committee has an incredible archive, and they have a scanned PDF that had all of that information in it. And somebody had sent a message to Brian Wheeler saying like, hey, people say they saw a zone-tailed hawk. And he said at that time they were breeding in Utah. And so he wasn't shocked that they had strayed into Western Colorado. So I think probably a little bit more common.
Hi, Jenny. I'm wondering, I work in a conservation landscape scale as well, much smaller than what you're dealing with. But I'm curious what you feel is your greatest accomplishment out of the collective work that you're doing and bringing, facilitating. What do you feel like the greatest accomplishment?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard to point to one single thing. I think that the Sonoran Joint Venture just is really good at building relationships, bringing people together, creating spaces that great things can come out of. And so, 20 years ago, we were supporting a lot of work, for example, in the Colorado River Delta, work that groups like Pro Natura Noroeste, Sonoran Institute, others were undertaking, really just getting started with some seed money or like hosting meetings so that people could come together and talk about it. And now there's incredible work happening there that we have nothing. Like providing that seed, like that initial spark, is really where the joint venture does its best work.
You've been working with kids through a period of incredible technological change. And I was curious what changes you've noticed.
Nobody carries a field guide anymore. A lot of kids don't carry binoculars anymore. They have giant cameras instead of binoculars. We have rules about technology at my camp, when you can and when you can't use it. But I think like overall, it's been amazing. Tools like iNaturalist and eBird just help us understand what we're seeing around us, help us connect to others around us more easily. I do admit, sorry, Cornell folks, I get a little bit annoyed with eBird during bird camp because kids will say, oh, there's a such and such. It's only 25 miles away. Can we go chase it? And I say, no, we cannot. Yeah, but also a lot of the places that we are don't have any good connectivity. So a lot of that technology that they theoretically have on their phone, they don't necessarily have access to. Yeah, but I think that's the biggest change, the cameras, like the accessibility of digital photography, and the skills. Holy moly, these kids are unbelievably skilled in the operation of those cameras and manipulation of digital imagery. Yeah.
We have time for one more question. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I'm curious about the joint venture private part, the funding and how that's secured and how that's deployed, or is it all mixed together?
It depends on the joint venture. So the Sonoran joint venture, the only private funding, I've gotten some private foundation support. And we have a partner that manages those funds because I work for the federal government. So like, you can't just write me a check made out to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's not that easy. Some joint ventures get funding from private industry. Like ConocoPhillips is an organization that's funded a lot of work in the joint ventures that are working in the Central Grasslands because they have an interest there. And this is really where each joint venture is a little bit different. Yeah, so there's some joint ventures that are standalone nonprofits. There are others that are fiscally sponsored by nonprofits, and so they just have more capability of managing private funds that way. Thank you so much.